Goodness. Object 416, the new kid on the block, or perhaps the new queen of the beauty contest, depending on who you are. It has made a bit of a splash through a variety of usage on a variety of maps, not excluding Ensk. Could this be a 69 replacement? Is it more of a gimmick? And do you think we'll continue to see the 416 in play?
Multiple point question.
Yes.
Um,
Let's start. Is it a gimmick?
no.
Okay, it's not a gimmick. Is it a
On
six?
some maps, in some situations, absolutely. But is the tank itself a gimmick? No. Like if you go on to say pro and you want to
Mhm.
stash it in the one line and use it as a backup to your 32 so they can't get attacked,
Mhm.
and you sit there, yeah, it's a gimmick because you're using it as a gimmick. You're camping.
Correct.
But I can think of a lot of different situations where the 416 can be used very, very effectively. But so far, we're doing that in America.
I guess we like the gimmick. Second, is this a 69 replacement?
No,
No.
it can't
Okay.
replace the 69. It replaces the 69 in the sense of I have ludicrous pen and I'm going to shoot you from wherever and it's going to go right through.
True.
But it doesn't have the fire rate equate to a 69.
Correct.
And really where the 69 shined was it had depression, and that's what we're missing the most in 742 right now.
Okay.
It's tanks with reasonable depression and fire rate, and mobility, and a tank that can separate and not get penalized for it.
Not get crushed. Yep.
A 1390 can do what a 69 can do in a lot of ways. So I think that's more the meta replacement for it lately.
Okay.
But at the same time, you can't do the same things. You can't go up and over a hill and take a shot and back off. It just doesn't happen in the 90-year era.
Or force the reload and not get screwed over because you have a 42-second reload. You just can't do it.
I would actually love the only 6-shot autoloader in the game was the 100. I think the 90 would be amazing if they cut it down to 4. And I'm
Okay.
willing to accept a 69 coming back with even 3 shots. I don't care.
Okay. Wow.
A whole huge clip in order to kill a tank in one go. I mean, if you're out historical accuracy, sure, why not? But I mean,
It's at that point, it's primarily useful in a 1v1, I think, setup. Like a 5100 can theoretically clip an IS-3, but it can't zero armor pen any of the shoulder pads. It can't bounce. It can't get messed up by RNG. But even so, in theory, it can. Whereas with the 69, it never could. But you solve the problem if you pair two 69s together on a corner or even on a hill and they poke up. Suddenly, in 4 seconds, you've got 1,000 damage downrange, and you can force the reload. Or if you want to run it solo, like you mentioned, you get a couple shots off. Get back behind a ridge, force the reload, 24 seconds, 23 seconds, you're ready to rock. So, okay. 69, clearly, yes, I do love the 69, but I won't monopolize our time there because, like Nagatron and his latency diatribe, I could go on as well, and that wouldn't be very fun for any of us.
We could turn this interview into 3 hours, man.
Yes, we could.
Easy.
Call it the Sam and David show. Every day at 5.
What really grinds our gears.
Oh goodness. Okay. Before we get into any punnery, let's keep moving. Overall meta of the game: EU, RU, NA. In a sentence, give us the 42-point meta for each of those servers. So the EU meta, the RU meta, and the NA meta. Now, if it's the same, obviously you can cheat and say the same, but I think we both know it's not.
Start with RU. RU is very fast, and here's part of the problem with this for me is
Okay.
I classify some of the EU teams as teams because they're teams, and
Ah,
that's how
I
they
see.
play. And the legit EU teams, for the most part, don't play anything like them.
Okay.
But that's also why they're not the number one in their area. What I see out of the Russian teams, for example, Virtus Pro, Dignitas, Navi, these kinds of teams, is their execution is insane. Their strats are usually very thought out, but for the most part, once the battle is happening, it just boils down to individual player decisions, and they focus fire, amazing. They track perfectly, and whenever they have to reposition, or it's like one guy versus two, half the time that one guy wins because he's
Something
that
crazy
good.
happens, yeah.
So we don't have the player skill here.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't exist.
Okay.
For a multitude of reasons that I won't really get into. They've also been doing this for like a full year longer
Been
than
doing it
us.
for longer
So
than we have, yes.
there is a and they got to do it where it was very consistent, and they got to play their tanks all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
their scene is very consistent as well. EU is a little bit more dynamic. They're willing to throw in like a 32 here and there,
Correct.
and then do all sorts of different things. They love to change their strats, and a lot of the meta happens before the game even starts. They're
Mm-hmm.
choosing where to go, and then after that, their tanker skill, it varies team to team, but on
Yeah.
average, I don't see the same tanker skill in the EU.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly strats and calls in that circumstance, and
Mm-hmm.
just people not knowing the lineup that they saw. Whereas in Russia, for the most part, teams have a very kind of a set thing that almost every team does on a map with very little deviation, and it
Mm-hmm.
just boils down to the finesse of how they did it. So all their meta is in, I know that guy's going to use that rock,
Okay.
so I'm going to take this one.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas EU is more like, they're going to use the 9-0, so we're going to use 1-2.
Gotcha.
Things
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
Totally different things, and that's because Russia has distilled down the game into what's pretty much objectively best, and they're all so good at responding to what is thrown at them, any sort of difference,
Mm-hmm.
that they don't need to go outside the box. Some European teams do it, and they do it well, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not criticizing them. Uh, you watch Navi, you never see anything particularly genius out of their strategy until they break
But
loose that
the
one
mm-hmm.
strat that changes everything and everybody starts doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, they just out-tank the crap out of everyone. And they're
Mm-hmm.
so good. It's just crazy to watch. Frustrating to watch. You're like, why would you go there? How would that work? Oh my god, you just killed 2 people by yourself.
I know the other
What?
day I was watching some RU streams and I saw a team from the south on Himmelsdorf capping the north base, and I thought, okay, I've seen this time after time after time on NA, and people get on cap and they get destroyed because they're trying to stay in the cute little cubby hole and they play it wrong. And I looked at their lineup and I thought, wow, they're running. I don't know if it was Navi, but it was one of those teams, one of the very top-notch teams. They're running. Wow, they're running 4 IS3s and a 5100. I thought, what a bizarre lineup. I've never seen this on Himmelsdorf. Well, it worked because they were able to stack 3 IS3s on that south cap corner and just absolutely rock the first guy who comes around A67. And I'm like, oh, they've got it won. Oh, wait, no, there's a flank coming around behind them. Well, long story short, I saw an absolutely phenomenal push through the cap into the A row, and I had never seen that kind of execution coming from NA, and frankly, I don't think I'd seen it from EU either. I watched that push and I thought, this is incredible. I've got to link it to somebody, so I quick started texting guys going, hey, watch this game, we'll watch it later, look at the push, look at the execution, the HP sharing, and they won something like, I think they lost like one of their T1s and one of their 8s, and just simply dominated the fight. It was phenomenal. It was a live event actually. RU live event. I can't remember which one. Anyway, all that to say, I absolutely agree with you as far as the RU skill level. Those top teams are simply phenomenal. And real quick now, oh, if you had something to say, go for it.
About North America.
Yes, I was going to say NA now in approximately one sentence.
uh, we don't know what we're doing. It's your one sentence.
Okay.
I can watch a European or Russian game for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
and when I see what they open with or where they're going,
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the response the other team takes makes sense to me. Neither team camps because they know the camping team typically loses. Sometimes they may grab one, most of the time
Mm-hmm.
not. Unless there's a couple instances where teams just camp and camp hard, but it's the best thing for them to do. And that really won't get into why. Because we're
Please,
near that
yes.
level in North America, and we just shouldn't be doing it.
Okay.
So
So NA
really
needs to skill up, needs to get those experience points, so to speak, and stop being bad. All right.
everybody better on top of that, because once everybody is making reasonable decisions,
Mhm.
then you remove this crazy factor that we have
Yes.
in the United States, where it's just like, why would they ever that?
Yeah.
And that's, I know some teams think that's a clever idea, but it's a gimmick, and that
Mhm.
only works a handful of times, and you may snipe a victory with it. But we should all be trying to play on a level where we beat somebody in the international stage,
Mhm.
because America is a very small community, and it's not going to get bigger unless we
Make a
get really good
splash. Yeah.
and start beating the other teams,
Yeah.
nobody's going to care about us until then.
Spot on, spot on. My next question was, and I think you've pretty much answered it. It was on NA. We're seeing substantially heavier lineups than our comrades overseas. Is this a failure or lesser degree of skill in our play, or simply a difference? And if I've got this wrong, feel free to correct me. But basically, Nagatron, from what you've said previously in this interview, it is a bit of a difference in play, but that's primarily related to skill. Teams are looking to play it a little bit more slower, a little bit more low risk, which frankly makes for more boring viewership, and they haven't advanced to the level where they're able to take that faster lineup, maybe bring a 69 back, something of that nature, because they're going to lose to maybe a camp, frankly, on NA with these slower, heavier T32 lineups. So basically a difference in skill, which is causing a difference in play. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
The only thing I would elaborate on it is I may be very critical about these things, but some people may look at it and be like, well, Nagatron thinks Fulcrum Gaming is so good. The answer is no. I think we are terrible. I think we are utterly terrible.
Wow.
And that there's so much room for improvement compared to the way we should all be playing this game. But
okay.
I'm just very opinionated about that
Very
stuff.
opinionated. He's got something to say.
It's not intending to be condescending to other teams in the sense that they need to get better. I think we all need to get better. There was one more thing on that. Oh, it's not entirely our fault either. Wargaming seems to be feeding the balance in a very, very, very poor manner. So heavier tanks are getting better. There's no doubt about it. And
Tiger
if they keep doing
H.
it, then it's going to be borderline unplayable. It'll just be camping in rock paper scissors. If you pushed, you're so slow that the other team capped you out because they just pushed a different direction. Or maybe you'll run light and they'll run heavy, and then you can do nothing but kite them. Maybe. I mean.
For sure. The TLDR version of that, folks, I think, is that NA is lesser skill than everybody else, but as Nagatron said, he sees Fulcrum as absolutely needing to improve. So no hate mail after these comments, please. But keep it interesting.
Everybody else being EU and RU.
Yes.
There are still other divisions, and they are worse than us.
Like SCA. You see some crazy stuff. Is it now?
They can be real bad. Some of their best teams are actually pretty good, but the difference between their best and the next level team is
which is something
huge.
We really saw on NA. Goodness, even 8 months ago. I think the skill gap has tightened up a little bit. Not to say that between the top and the bottom of even the WGLNL league there's not a huge gap, because frankly there is. But as opposed to 8 months, a year ago, we actually have several teams I feel like are okay, at least good in the NA sphere. Cunningham's, they can challenge pretty much anybody that could be shown up to Vegas, or Fulcrum obviously hasn't been able to do that for a long time, but Simp is still in there. And River of Blood, the darling of the casters for Wigglena, I'd like to see something special. I'm not sure they can pull it out, but anyway, better teams are rising up. Now, obviously, they're not to the point where you would like them to be. I would like them to be where even our viewers perhaps might, but they're getting better. I'm happy to see that.
More importantly, where EU and RU want them to be.
Correct.
Because we should care what they think, because they know what they're doing.
It's the big brother that we should be saying, hey, do we suck that badly? And the big brother says, yeah, but grow up. Then we can really duke it out instead of just getting noogied or whatever. All right. Proc teams bringing 32s, good or bad for the game? We've pretty much already answered that. Said it's awful. Yes, and we 100% agree there. And I have two last questions for you. 110. Does it have esports potential, Nagatron? Give it to us straight. Give us the skinny. The viewers want to know. I want to know. Mom and Dad want to know. Tell us. Can it cut the mustard?
Kind of. I wouldn't use it, but it has more view range than an IS-3. Because really, we're just comparing it to the IS-3 because there's no point in doing anything else. The gun, the 100 mil, I believe it is, doesn't have the alpha, so the whole point of that is gone. And the 122, is it?
Yeah, it's like the IS 122. It's horrible.
Okay. Yeah, it's a heat round, and it's a heat round that just got lowered by 50, and it was
Mm.
already unreliable to begin with. So now I don't see a point.
Don't see. Okay. Fair enough. And as our final question, is there anything else you'd like to share with us about overall meta, or maybe 742 tanks, or what you had for lunch? Anything at all?
I was trying to think. There was something I was going to comment on that you were bringing up before. Oh, we're talking about the closing of the skill gap, essentially. This isn't something that's just happened in the United States. If you pay attention to EURU, it's happening there too.
Okay.
All of a sudden, Navi is dropping rounds. Why is that? They used to never lose, ever, ever. And you'd watch their games, and you're like, oh well.
This will be a fun win.
watch them play anyone on steps, and they basically barely move. Let Eclipse kill everything. Eclipse is their artillery, and he's already Jesus, basically. He just, it's ridiculous. It's because, yes, the other teams are getting better, and the players are getting better, but the game is getting worse. The balance of the game is being distilled down to something very simple.
Okay.
Watching the teams in WGLNA now try to adjust to what it would have been like back in 8.4, 8.5, when Artie and everything was back the way it was before, when the system worked the way it did, which is a huge factor in my opinion. That is one of my biggest complaints, is the spotting system is totally whack.
Yeah, It's. I remember when we played.
I have proof of it, but I have not distributed that proof because I don't want people abusing this exploit, although some people already do. There are ways to make yourself invisible.
Excellent. Here we go. We've got it from the mouth of a pro. Exploits. I remember when we played you guys on Ensk once, and I went past, and I'm not saying you were using an exploit. I don't think you were. I think it was just spotting mechanics. I went past an opening in my IS-3, and I got lit, and I lit no one else. And I thought, well, this sure sucks, because now he knows I'm here, and I don't know what lit me. I don't, is it T1, 5100, IS-3? And anyway, yeah, spotting mechanics a little bit screwy sometimes. A little bit screwy.
Artie's gone, which makes open maps so simple. So simple and so dumb, really. It's just like, okay, we can theoretically, what should we should both camp. Steps.
Camp hard, yeah.
The idea of pushing on steps, you don't really have to. You can camp with a mobile lineup, and the instant they push on you, just push back, as long as you do it in the right formation. And granted, you do that enough, somebody will crack it, which is why everybody should stay aggressive anyways. Don't get me wrong here. But Artie used to make everything intense on that map. You didn't make a single move without just cringing the whole time, expecting yourself to die. There was no slowing down. There was no stagnation, because every moment you wasted came back to haunt you, and it was awful. The same thing happened with some of the other maps, with with Ice and Sternpanzer, which we won't even keep going.
I don't want to think about those days. Those were nightmares for me.
And one thing you will rarely see now, and this is something that I noticed and actually had intended whenever we were doing what was that tournament?
Minsk?
No. It was PAX last year, and me and Relics were hosting. This is so bad.
Oh, wow.
Oh, the King of the Hill. The King of the Hill stuff.
Oh, yes, I remember that. That was
whole format.
Interesting.
I removed scouts, right?
Yes, and we camped with 32s on steps.
Oh, no, I forced it to encounter.
True. I was on Havoc. We still brought 32s.
Yeah, and
we didn't last that long.
To mixed results. Exactly. And encounter, it works counter because if I hadn't have done that, I know there would have been camping. I know, and there would have been no reason not to move. But one thing you noticed from that was the instant somebody tried to separate and come around behind their opponent, the good opponent would just push all their tanks onto one of those prongs.
Correct.
Done. Right? Very, very simple thing. And it was mitigated in a couple different ways through that format. I won't get into the meta of that because it's pointless. But we actually just have a worse version of that going on now. You watch steps. Do you see them split off a unit of 3 somewhere and a unit of 2 somewhere else? No, because
Not
the
that
3
often
seconds,
these days.
the 30 seconds it's going to take you to cross a berm and help your teammates, all 3 of them or all 2 of them are dead.
Yeah.
The instant you split, somebody will push on you. That's what Artie is for.
To equalize, then.
If you're camping, you have to leave. If we split up and you want to chase one of our guys, you're going to get hit by arty. Every spot we got mattered, and that is missing, and it's missing huge. I could go into a long detail about how arty needs to be balanced, but that aspect needs to come back. TDs can't do it, and TDs should be banned from 742, in my opinion.
To prevent camping?
To prevent it, because they don't have use. And if there is ever one that has a dynamic use, it's guaranteed to be overpowered. It's going to have something like ridiculous front armor. It's going to be like a fast 95 or something like that. And be like, what? You just locked down a whole lane with that thing? Of course, because there's nothing to make it punish it. Because the
Binox on it
is artillery. So, yeah.
Interesting. Got some.
I'm already doing it, and I've been doing this a lot lately, so I'll stop. But without going off on a long way, the game is becoming simpler, and everybody is getting better, and it's making everything more random. And all those things, I think, aside from everybody getting better, all the rest of those things, I think, are terrible for the game. Absolutely terrible, and they have to stop now, because we have one window to show America in particular that this game is exciting and dynamic and really in depth. And what they're seeing right now is garbage, and that window only comes once. So it has to change now.
Camping is not fun to watch. I remember the other night I was watching, well, maybe I shouldn't name names on the video, but I was watching some WGLNA the last night of it, and it was so boring. I actually took a screenshot, or I took a picture of myself holding some ice cream, and I wrote on it, still more exciting than X and Y, these teams that we were watching. You just posted it in the chat, because I thought, this is ridiculous. What is going on here? And people seem to agree with me, frankly, that it was actually more exciting. So, yeah, the slow gameplay is not fun.
The way I know is whenever I catch myself wiping dust off of nearby objects. That's when I'm like, wow, this game's bad.
The dust.
Sit there and like, oh, your game's got a little bit of, oh, wait.
There's a game going on.
There's supposed to be a professional match going on, and nothing's happening.
Oh, my goodness.
But again, you know, while America is worse at it than anybody else, that is a thing limited to us. All these same things are happening in EURU. It's a problem with the game. Wargaming has to fix it. Wargaming has to directly support 742 if it's something they actually want to do. The only reason it's succeeding overseas is because the game's astronomically bigger overseas, and people are interested in it. Especially, I mean, we already know they just got Russia. They're never going to lose it. Yeah. Because
there's nothing else to do in Russia.
Need to get it. There is.
Okay, so there's a few things to do.
For one reason or another, they own Russia, so they have a pretty good base, and they're balancing the game based off of the Russian demographics, which have nothing to do with the U.S. and European demographics. We need we need maps specifically tailored for 742. We need tanks balanced for 742.
He's got it. Oh my goodness.
We need a lot, and we had something that was workable at least. Old 742, I had complaints about it. I was like, please, you know, let's cut it down to 5 and have some better maps or something like that. I had nowhere near as much to complain about as I do now. Back then, my biggest complaint was plus or minus 25% RNG.
I remember
now
those
I'm like,
days.
whatever. I just want Artie back.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Good comments. Good comments. Thank you so much, Nagatron, for taking the time to do this interview with me. I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. I enjoyed getting your insight on some of the metagame we have going on, some of the actual PvP as well, and I know our viewers are going to love it as well. So once again, thank you so much. Thanks for coming out, and if you got any last words for the camera, give them to us.
Just thanks for having me. It's been fun.
All right. Have a good one.